What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. My name is Eric, and as always, my co-host Will is going to be joining us, but he's going to come in for the second half of the video for more of a discussion section about this player. If you haven't seen the first video in our prospect profile series, we just did Jackson Smith and Jigba on Monday, so go check that out. We would really appreciate it. But today, we are going to be getting into our draft prospect profile for Kayshon Boutte. Boutte is a 6-foot-tall, 205-pound wide receiver out of LSU. He is 20.7 years old, and he's declaring as a junior, so he's an early declare, which you love to see. And coming out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit, so he's been a high pedigree player for quite some time now. Boutte's freshman year was the COVID year in 2020, where Jamar Chase had opted out, but Terrace Marshall was still playing. The team was in limbo after Joe Burrow left, and they actually had 3 different quarterbacks all get over 130 attempts that year. In a mediocre offense where he wasn't the first target, Boutte was putting up decent numbers for a freshman, but nothing overly impressive. But then Terrace Marshall decided to opt out for the final 3 games of the season, so Kayshon assumed the role of wide receiver 1 in the offense. And in those 3 games, against some of the toughest competition in the SEC in Alabama, Florida, and Ole Miss, he went nuclear. He caught 27 passes for 527 yards and 4 touchdowns. In the final game of the season, he went 14 for 308 and 3, which is really what put him on the map. Keep in mind, he did all of that as an 18-year-old, giving him a breakout age in the 98th percentile. Then he started right where he left off in his sophomore season. In his first 6 games, he tallied 38 receptions for 509 yards and 9 touchdowns. At that point, he was in the running for the Biletnikoff Award, along with Jordan Addison. Unfortunately, he then suffered an ankle injury that required surgery and ended his season. He ended up having a second surgery on his ankle as a cleanup in the spring, which delayed his recovery timetable even further and didn't allow him to practice with the team until late in their offseason program. On top of his injury, a new coaching staff had been brought in at LSU, and the quarterback situation was still uncertain. There were actually rumors that Kayshon might transfer, which he even acknowledged, saying that he definitely thought about it, but ultimately he decided to stay. Unfortunately for Boutte, all these things culminated into his junior year being the worst year of his career. So that's kind of the general overview of his career at LSU, but now let's get into the specific pros and cons to his game. We'll start with the pros. His best quality, in my opinion, is what he can do with the ball in his hands. He turns into a running back after the catch. He's really twitchy and elusive, but also powerful. He's one of the best in the entire class in terms of his yak ability. Also, his ball tracking is top tier. Part of what makes him so dangerous on deep passes is just his ability to locate the football and take the optimal path to it. Oftentimes, he'll trick DBs into thinking that he's just going to run under a ball, only to jump for it late in order to minimize their impact at the catch point. He's also got really solid hands. Similar to what I said about JSN, Boutte is a natural hands catcher. He prefers to extend his arms and catch the ball out in front of him, rather than let it get into his chest. He's got great body control as well. Like I said with his ball tracking, he routinely sets up those defenders to keep them away from the catch point, but then at the last second as the ball arrives, he'll jump and contort himself to be able to high point the football. Specifically on this play, he maintains field awareness and gets both feet in bounds. And then on top of all that, he still protects the football by rolling before hitting the ground, which is really impressive to see. And then lastly, this guy's fast. Typically when we see reported high school 40 times for players, they're a lot slower than the 40 times they eventually run at the combine or at their pro day. If that's the case for Boutte though, then he's an absolute burner, because he ran a 4.37 40 in high school. We see this play out on tape too, as he consistently runs away from defenders once he hits green grass. So those are some of the best parts of his game, but now let's get into some of the cons. The biggest thing for me is that he probably still needs to develop more as a route runner. It's not that he's bad at it, but he definitely needs to add some nuance to his route running so that he doesn't have to rely so heavily on just his athleticism and speed to create separation. The other cons aren't really related to attributes of his game, but more so question marks and rumors kind of swirling around him right now. The first one being, will his ankle injury have lasting effects? We never got full confirmation of exactly what his injury was. We just know that it required 2 surgeries, and it seemed to limit him and his explosiveness last year. The second one is off-the-field concerns. At this point, we don't have a lot of detail to substantiate some of the claims that are being thrown at him, but I want to bring Will in to discuss that part a little bit further. So that's going to wrap up our player preview for Kayshon Boutte, and let's get into the discussion section.
What's up, guys? I'm Will, and then you guys already seen Eric talking for a little bit, but We're here to talk about some of the off-the-field issues that Mr. Kayshon has. So, Eric, sex parties, Kayshon Boutte. Let's talk about it.
Into him, not into him. Yeah, so if you're not aware, that is probably the biggest talking point, the biggest quote-unquote off-the-field issue that's being floated around for Kayshon Boutte. A rumored sex party with some of the coaching staff at LSU and another female. I'm honestly not sure how she's related to the LSU situation, but yeah, we don't know a ton about it. I'm not sure that it's something that we should really be concerned about at all. I don't think there were any laws broken. I don't think that it was unconsensual or anything like that, as far as I've heard. So
Yeah, it's like unless a crime or a charge is to pop out of this, it's like you said, it's nothing really to be concerned about. It's like, yeah, he's kind of a strange guy, gets into some weird stuff in his off time, but other than that, I mean, when he's on the field, he's there to play football. So, let the guy do what he wants outside of practice, as long as...
Yeah, unless we hear something else about the situation that we haven't heard yet, I'm not too worried about that. But then there's also been some other rumors, not substantiated, but that his relationship with the new coaching staff that came in, Brian Kelly and the others that came in to LSU, along with the new quarterback, Jalen Daniels, that it was a little bit contentious. They didn't really see eye to eye, and that may have contributed to part of the reason that he had a down season in his junior year. Are you buying into any of that?
So I'm not buying into it a lot, but if it were true, I guess it would kind of make sense. I think your chemistry with the people that you did have a sex party with versus the ones you didn't have a sex party with, it would be a little bit off. But being serious, I do think that is something that could play a factor into whether, a player is effective or not. We've seen that at the professional level. We've seen it at the college level. Sometimes it's all about situation. And if this one wasn't working out for him, we've seen him perform in the past. And usually as people go along, especially in college, they get better as they go along because you're not getting that old yet. You're not really regressing yet. But it could be something that could have had an impact on his performance because I don't think it was a physical thing.
Yeah, so that's something that I have a question about as well, is like, that's the next thing up on the list also. Are we concerned that his injury is going to have lasting effects? It did seem to me like he was a little bit less explosive in his junior year, and I don't know if that was rust from the 10 months of recovery, if that was, directly related to the injury and he had lost some of that explosion. Even if that's the case, maybe he gets that back after a year, similar to like an ACL injury where you want guys 2 years removed from the injury where they're fully recovered. So where do you fall in that area? Like what you think about his injury?
Yeah, I'm from the camp of he just kind of needs some time to recover and he will get back up to speed. Because even with his last game, like we said in a prior video, I don't remember exactly which one, but his last game of the season against Georgia in the SEC championship game, he actually played really well. It's just a matter of, I guess, him getting back up to speed and just feeling like himself again, which I think he will in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's closer to where I fall as well. I'm a little bit concerned that it could be like a Michael Thomas situation, mostly just because we don't have any specifics for the ankle injury. We never got like official word as to what it was that happened. He had the first surgery and then the cleanup surgery, which led a lot of people to believe that there may have been like a broken bone situation or like some fragmentation of bones where they had to go in and take those out. Ultimately, like you said, I'm not too worried. I think 2 years removed and heading into the NFL, he should be just fine. But I think because there's question marks with the injury and with the off the field concerns, it could potentially hurt his NFL draft capital. And with that being said, like, I think based on talent, he's probably a late first, early second round pick at the latest. But with these swirling concerns and rumors and stuff like that, it might drop him further. If he were to go, say, late third, early fourth in the NFL draft, how negatively do you think that impacts his production at the NFL level? And like, how far does that drop him in rookie drafts for you?
I think it all depends on the landing spot, honestly. Because we've seen wide receivers also get picked in those later rounds and still come in and make an immediate impact. Like we saw it with the Commanders with Terry McLaurin. He was a third round pick, ended up coming in, getting slotted in pretty early. We've got Tyreek Hill in the past, who he was a fifth round pick, and obviously now he's Tyreek Hill. So it all comes down to who the player is, where they kind of end up at, but I think he's one of those guys that no matter where he's at, he's still going to be himself. So I think he's still going to perform. But like you said, I do think his draft capital could be pretty severely hurt by what's going on around him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hope for his sake and for our sake as well, just so that we have confidence in drafting him, that isn't the case. We'll get a clearer picture on that as we get further into the offseason, see some more mock drafts. The NFL rumor mill will get going a little bit more, and we'll see about that. But then, so strictly based on talent, if we're not worried about the injury, if we're not worried about any of the other stuff, where do you think he ranks in this draft class?
I think he ranks up there with guys like Jordan Addison, like the Jackson Smith and Jigbas. Like I think, obviously, I don't really think he's in JSN's tier because JSN is kind of a little bit of a leap above a lot of the other wide receiver prospects this year. But in terms of like, especially Jordan Addison, I feel like he could have been competing right there with him for a Fred Biletnikoff this year if he wasn't hurt, or just stuff like that. I really do feel like he is up there in that higher tier. It's just the off the field issues are going to hurt his capital. But in terms of him as a player, I think he's right up there with the top tier guys.
No, I completely agree with you. I think JSN is probably still above him. I think he's just a more well-rounded prospect, good in all areas. But Kayshon is definitely more athletically gifted, faster than JSN. And I think he's right in that Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison territory if we're not worried about this other stuff, which I think is going to lead to people being able to get him on a pretty good discount. If you can get him in the late first of your rookie drafts, the early second of your rookie drafts, I think that should be a steal for a guy as talented as he is. We were talking about it a little bit before we got on air, but I do have a comp for him. I know a lot of people like to throw out other LSU comps, but the guy that I see similar to him in his tape is DJ Moore. I went back and looked at DJ Moore's Maryland tape when he was coming out, and he's that same type of yak monster, really athletically gifted, not necessarily like a route technician, but still a good separator. So I think those guys are pretty similar. And shout out to Angelo Dynasty, Angelo FF on Twitter. He was the one that kind of pointed that out to me. And I like that comp a lot.
Nah, that's dope. That's actually a really good comp because it's like two guys who, like you said earlier in the analysis, they catch the ball, and after that, they're pretty much a running back at that point. Kind of have that similar build as well. It's like, I like that. I do like that a lot.
Yeah. So that's kind of the trajectory that I see for him at the NFL level. Hopefully he ends up in a spot better than DJ Moore did, and gets himself a quarterback, because I think he could be really, really good. But so based on all of that, we kind of alluded to it already, but where do you think he's going to go in rookie drafts? And where would you take him, like outside of market value?
I think that as of right this second, like you said, I honestly feel like he is a first-round draft pick in rookie drafts, at least in terms of the player. But in terms of where he's going to fall, he's probably going to end up falling around that early second, late first, just because of the uncertainty around him, like you said. Maybe even middle second, depending on how your league feels about him. But like you said, if I were to take him at the end of the first, early second, I would kind of be ecstatic about that, because I feel like that is a steal. If I were to get him in middle second, obviously that's a steal. I wouldn't quite use one of those earlier mid-round first-round picks or an early first-round pick, but at the same time, depending on the landing spot, we still got a lot of real estate left to go with these guys. Yeah. But as of this second, I would go late first, early second. But the combine could change a lot of that, or even just the draft and where he ends up at. But I do think he's gonna end up around those spots.
Yeah, I've been trying to look at a bunch of rookie mock drafts and stuff from other channels and other spaces. I've seen him go anywhere from like the 109 to the 205 in rookie drafts, in like 12-team rookie drafts. And I know that when we did our first-round rookie mock draft, I started considering him right around that 109 spot. And I probably, in hindsight, should have taken him at the 112 instead of Zach Evans. They're both prospects that I really, really like. And this is a deep class, so you're going to have a lot of those decisions to make right around that area of the late first or early second. But I think he's probably worthy of that first-round pick, and that's where I would take him, market value aside. But I think he's going to slip into the second in a lot of rookie drafts.
Especially if your team is looking for a young wide receiver to step up. I think he might be one of those guys who either gets some action pretty early on, or when he does get it, he's going to get a lot of looks. At least that's how I feel personally. I think he's that kind of talent.
Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, so that's pretty much all we got to talk about for Kayshon Boutte. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned something from it, and I want you guys to engage with us in the comments. Let us know what you think of Kayshon and his trajectory headed into the NFL, where you would take him in rookie drafts, all that good stuff. But yeah, Will, you want to wrap us up?
Hell yeah.
As we get out of here?
Hell yeah. Make sure you guys, first off, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for getting this far. If you have, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we drop all of our newest videos. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. We're almost there. So any little bit helps. If you needed that reminder, here it is. Also hit that like and comment button like Eric said. Helps us get out in the algorithm more, gets our stuff out in front of more people. Yeah, and then check out the description for our other socials. You'll find our Twitter, you'll find TikTok, stuff like that. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, we love you, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.